Hi VC, this is Bev here, Clarkovision, and thanks for coming along to my next video. This one actually, I was inspired to do this after watching Melinda Murphy's channel. She did a video recently on just an observation on original pressings versus reissues and the difference in sound quality. Was there much difference? Was the original better? Was the reissue better? Etc, etc. So she picked out about 5 or 6 records where she had an original and a reissue from her collection, and that listened to the same songs off each one and compared. She jotted down some notes and things and did a comparison. And what was really interesting for me about that was she had a music on vinyl reissue that featured. Now, I think most of us who have had a music on vinyl reissue have all sang the praises about what a good issue they do, what a good pressing they make. The sound quality is excellent, and for myself, I know I've got at least 2 in the collection, maybe 3, but I can't remember off the top of my head. And the music on vinyl records that I have, the reissues, I know that they are really excellent sounding. You know, I'm delighted with them. But interestingly, Melinda found in this particular music on vinyl issue versus the original, she was rather disappointed with it, which was a surprise to me and herself and probably everybody else who you know, has experienced music on vinyl. But yeah, that was a really interesting one for me. It kind of got me interested, and I thought I'm going to just dig out a few myself and do this same comparison thing. The only thing is, I've picked out 5. And however, none of the reissues are a music on vinyl reissue, because the music on vinyls I do have, I don't have an original to compare it with on vinyl. I only have a CD, which is not really it's not really what I want to do, because I think with the CD you're going to get a difference anyway. There is a noticeable difference with CDs anyway. That was the whole thing about the CD. So I've not done that, but I've picked out 5, and all mine are from the rock and metal scene, and compared the originals to the reissues that I have. And they're all pretty well-known albums. You know, most people should not be surprised to see what they are. And I've picked 2 songs from each album. I have listened to the same 2 tracks on both pressings of each one, and I've jotted down some notes, and I've tried to kind of decipher what I prefer out of the pressings. And yeah, I've sat in the same seat. I've not altered the volume. The volume has stayed the same for every single record. So yeah, but so we'll just get on with it, because you know what, babbling happen. You know, if I start babbling, it goes on. So the first one is I did a comparison of is Halloween, Keepers of the 7 Keys, Part 2. This one's more shiny because it's in my gatefold protector sleeve. This is the original from 1988. And this one is the reissue from the box set from last year, the Starlight box set that Halloween issued. Yeah, actually, it says 2015 on here, but I'm sure that only came out, was it last year? I don't know. But yeah, it says 2015, so anyway, it's a 2015 or later reissue. So yeah, the only other difference is this is on standard black vinyl, this one was on a coloured vinyl. It's a kind of a clear silvery splatter or something like that, but So the notes, I've got my notes in front of me here, so if I'm looking down just to see, that'll be why. So the songs I picked for Keepers 2 were, I went for the last 2 tracks on the album, both side B, which was I Want Out and Keeper of the Seven Keys, which is about 13 minutes long. And that song in particular, it's got quieter parts, louder parts, slower parts, faster parts. It's all very interesting. And so for the original, I'm sitting listening to it and I'm thinking it's the whole thing, it sounds clear. There's a nice balance to the instruments and the vocals. I thought the vocals were clear, the drums were really crisp, the crash cymbals and the hi-hats and all that, they were distinctively noticeable. The guitars and the bass, I thought there was a good balance between them, and the lead guitar you could hear easily without it overruling what was going on behind it, and that was clear sounding. And the Reissue, which is it's Noise BMG Sanctuary. These are all the names on the Reissue, part of the BMG group. What have I got here? Again, I thought what I noticed the most on this one, well, not so much the most, but what I did notice was the volume level was slightly lower. Not a huge deal, but very slightly lower than the original 1988 pressing. For the bass, it sounded as if it had been turned down a notch. There wasn't the same kind of boom, the underlying boom that you can sometimes get depending on where you sit, I think. And so if I was sat back in my chair, I would hear the bass just a little bit more than if I sat up and forward. It was kind of just slightly less, but I did notice the bass was just a touch down, and the lead guitar also seemed quieter, but you could still hear it quite clearly. It wasn't as if you were straining to hear it over the other instruments. So generally I thought both of them were equally very excellent pressings, and across the board they were both very good to listen to. And if I had to pick one, I would say the original just beats it by a fraction, but there's not a lot in it to compare the difference for me. So that's Keeper of the Seven Keys. I'm just going to put that one over there. You might notice a slight difference in the background. I've got a new desk for the computer, and I've just moved a couple of things around a little bit, so I'm slightly further up to the window and the curtains here. But generally it's the same, except I've got a lamp growing out the back of my head, sort of. So yeah, the next album that I had an original and a reissue of is Running Wild, Port Royal. This is the reissue, the remastered on 180 gram vinyl. Noise reissued this. This is the original on Noise. This is also 1988. It is an 88 pressing, but I don't think it's the first press, but it's an early one, because I believe the first press doesn't have the barcode, whereas this one does, so it is an early press from 88. This is the one that I got from an eBay seller, and it ended up, because it was packaged so badly, it's ended up warped. It does play, but it just doesn't look right at all. It's, so that was the disappointment for that. So I put on Port Royal, and I picked the first 2 tracks of side B. I went with Conquistadors and Blown to Kingdom Come for this one. Again, I thought overall they were both excellent recordings. But I did notice, more so than the Halloween record, that the volume on the reissue for this one is lower again. It's slightly lower, there's more of a notice, because as I say, the volume on the hi-fi was not touched, but there is more of a difference, if you like, between the original and the repress. However, there's a bass intro on Conquistadors, and on both it sounded really crisp and clear. Once the song kicked in, because it's a fast-paced song, I thought on the original 88 the bass was quite boomy in places again. However, the vocals were clear, the drums were excellent, and the guitars were just out there and in your face. On the original, the vocals and the guitars were right in your face. The lead guitar was spot on, nice and clear as well, but again, it wasn't just too out there. While the lead was there, you could still hear what else is going on underneath it. On the back to the reissue, again, with it sounding lower volume, I thought the overall sound was quieter, and therefore I thought it's not just quite as clear. But then I thought maybe it's just I'm adjusting to the lower volume, because as both the songs went on, I thought the whole thing, there was a bit of a warmth to the sound. Overall, and again, everything was clear, that it was just not as in your face in places as what the original 88 press was. So again, it came down to they're both excellent sounding records. I wouldn't have a particular problem playing either. I would listen to either one. And I found I couldn't really decide, to be honest, but I'd probably go with the original again, just because, I don't know, just because it's original, and the overall volume was just that little bit more in your face, which is kind of what you want with Running Wild. You know, they're heavy power metal, you know, you want a bit of power behind it, obviously, so that is Port Royal. So, album 3. Probably one of my favourite albums, and it's by my favourite band. This is my favourite album by these guys, Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, and yeah, this is the repress, this is the original issue. Again, this is a 1988 album, so it seems to be the year at the moment. Yeah, this is EMI 1988, and this reissue is this is a 24 reissue. Again, Iron Maiden, Parlophone, EMI. So pretty much, you know, this one's 180 gram. There's, you know, not really any difference to see on them, I suppose. So, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, I went for the first two tracks, the opening Moonchild and the follow-up Infinite Dreams, which I adore that song. And so the intro, on the original press, Bruce's intro with the Seven Deadly Sins thing, it was very quiet. And I thought, I'm actually going to have to turn this one up. But no, once the song got going, it was of a sufficient volume. It's just the intro was very quiet. But it was clear. The voice was clear. There was a little bit minor surface noise in the quiet bits, but obviously you can't hear that once the song kicks in. And obviously because it's an original, some of them are going to have that on the originals. So the drums on this one, when the song got going on the 1988, the drums were absolutely crystal clear, you know, shimmering crystal clear. The Nico's, what do you call these things? The cymbals, crash cymbals, and you know, the hi-hats and all these stuff. They were just so clear, but as was the drums, you know, and Nico McBrain's got tons of different drums, so all of them stood out perfectly. The vocals were strong and clear. There was a really good balance with the guitars and bass in the mix. The bass wasn't overpowering, which sometimes it can be, but no, I just thought the bass was just right, actually, to be honest. The lead guitar was excellent as well. I did think there was just a touch where Bruce's vocals are going on and the lead guitar kind of kicks in over the vocal. It was almost as if the guitar wanted to override the vocal at that point, but it kind of works okay anyway, because Bruce is finishing off his part and the lead's coming in, and there's a nice... This is on Infinite Dreams, actually, I'm talking about, and there's just a nice guitar lead section in that song, which is just so cool. But you could hear the guitar harmonies and all that dead clear, so the original was absolutely marvellous. Again, with the reissue, the volume was quieter, and the drums sounded just a little bit less prominent. They weren't as... prominent, I guess, is the word I want to use. So, and I don't know, again, I thought they weren't just this sharp as on the original, but I wondered again if that was just due to the lower volume. I mean, if I was to turn it up, would it become as clear as what I heard on the original? But again, good balance with the vocals and the bass and the guitars, the whole thing. And the body of the song. The vocals didn't seem as prominent in places either. The lead guitar was still very prominent, but again, just at that same bit on Infinite Dreams that I was referring to before, it didn't seem to cover over Bruce's vocal ending as what it did on the original. And there's a couple of guitar fills in places that Adrian throws in, and they just didn't seem as, again, as prominent as what they are on the original press, but still there for you to hear them quite easily, which is the point. It just, the whole reissue just seemed that little bit softer, quieter kind of sound. Again, both very well produced, and it was all pretty clear, and so I just went again fractionally for the original, and by this point I'm thinking this is getting quite tricky for me. This is not as easy as I thought it would be. I thought there would be a very noticeable difference, which possibly explains as well. I asked Andy over at Cloudy Milder one day, because he said he was going to retire his original Iron Maidens and get more of the reissues in, and I asked him one day if he noticed, when he picked up a couple, if he had noticed any difference on the reissue compared to his original, as in sound-wise, and he says not really. He says there's they both sound good, and from what I'm hearing here as well, they do both sound good. There's just slight differences, but nothing to speak of. So again, I'm just edging the original. Second last one, I went for Def Leppard. I had to kind of include something for these guys. I mean, this is one of the 4 albums that I know off by heart, to be honest with you. So I went for On Through the Night because this was Def Leppard's first album. So I picked this is my Japanese original pressing. This is a first pressing from Japan from 1980 on Vertigo. This is the 2018 reissue that came out in the boxed set that Def Leppard released with the first 4 albums in it, and it had the Australian style gatefold sleeve. Again, 180 gram for this one. And I thought I'm going to do it against the Japanese one because I've got original UK press as well. But I thought the Japanese ones were also renowned for being just that little bit better quality sometimes and sound. And the results on this one I thought were a little bit more interesting for me. Now, On Through the Night, as most Def Leppard fans would certainly know, has always been noted as being overproduced. The production by Tom Allen, they just layered it and layered it and layered it and kind of went overboard a little bit to the point where the production started to suffer. The sound of the production did start to suffer. Excuse me, I've just got a dry throat here. So that may well have a factor in the results of this. So the two songs I picked from this album, I just went for a couple of random songs. I picked When the Walls Came Tumbling Down and the Overture, which is the album closer, and it's kind of slow and fast and has quiet bits and stuff, and that is acoustic. So on the original Japanese, the vocals were really clear, the guitars had that raw, unpolished sound, they were very prominent and in your face. The drums and bass seemed nicely balanced. You could hear the guitar fills pretty easily. When I got that on the second track, Overture, I've got down here that the bass seemed a little boomier as that song went on. For some reason, it just seemed to kind of pick up a little bit. And the drums remained a solid feature throughout, but they were not solid enough to sort of dominate, if you like, but you noticed they were there, that's for sure. And the lead guitars, as well as the backing guitars, but the lead guitars were really raw and prominent. On the reissue from 2018, this was done, this is Universal Music Phonogram. So I thought the introduction to The Walls Came Tumbling Down was clearer, fractionally clearer than this Japanese original. I thought there was a better balance overall over all the instruments and the vocals. I just felt there was a more even sound across it. Some of the leads fills were not just quite as prominent or noticeable as on the original from 1980, and I just thought, in general, overall, the sound was tidier, if you like, and I don't know if that is a result of the original production being so overdubbed, and they did something to obviously try and just tidy up the sound quality as best they could in the studio for the represses. But surprisingly for me, the reissue, I feel, has the better overall sound than the original from Japan, which was a surprise. But again, they're both good sounding pressings. I just feel that overall, for On Through the Night, this one did win as far as quality of the sound goes. And the last one, I went for Def Leppard again. Basically, Hysteria being the unique thing that it actually is. This is my original 1987 UK press that my dad got me. and this is the 2017 reissue from the 30th anniversary version, which again is universal. This one was issued on a gatefold and split across 2 vinyls, so there's 4 sides. Now, Hysteria. It's a funny thing, for me anyway, and probably for quite a few people, but this album, Hysteria by Def Leppard, is an album like no other. I think I've said this before, but there's nothing else that sounds anything like it. It's a standalone record, and the music on it is just so different to anything else, anywhere else. Under modern hard rock. I wouldn't class this as metal, no way, it's just more hard rock. So, I'll get on with my... this was kind of... I was expecting this to be easier to judge, and it was pretty easy because from day one, whenever Hysteria came out in 1987, every review, report, you know, assessment, critic, whatever, everybody has talked about how immaculate the production and how state-of-the-art the production of this album was at the time. And it still is to this day. And so when they talk about reissuing Hysteria, I thought, why do they want to reissue Hysteria as a remaster? Because you can't really... It's already been mastered to the highest of standards. There's no point in reissuing this sort of thing as a remaster. However, that was my initial thought. A couple of surprising things about this one though. The 1987, I put this on, again, volume was never touched throughout this whole thing, and this was quieter than the other original pressings from the other 4 albums. I think they were quite quiet, really quiet. But I'm listening to it all, and I know this album off by heart. I've listened to it so many times, and you just get caught up in the whole thing. The 2 tracks I picked were Armageddon It and Gods of War, which are my 2 favourite tracks off the album anyway. And all I've wrote down here is perfect production. Everything is finely tuned. The vocals, the backing vocals, the drums, the bass, the guitars, everything is balanced just right. And that's where I thought this is going to be easy. There's nothing unpleasant about the sound of that. So I then popped on the reissue and I thought, am I going to notice much of a change in this? And again, interestingly and unusually, and opposite to the other 4, the reissue is much louder, volume-wise, than the original for this one. So they've upped the output levels or whatever. Therefore, and I don't know, again, if this is just a result of the volume being louder, but I found the drums were just a touch on the boomy side. The snare drum is very prominent, I've noticed, on Hysteria. Even on the original, it's very prominent, but it's not kind of, it doesn't get in the road of everything else. But if you were to sit back in the seat and feel or hear the bassiness, focus on the bass, you notice it's very prominent. And you can feel the bass guitar obviously as well. So I don't know if that is just because also this was an electronic kit from 1987. It was in fact, it started getting built, I don't know, about 1985 probably. You know, there was no other drum kit like it on a rock album at the time. Blah, blah, blah. And so again, I came up with this reissue sounds just very slightly clearer than the original, but as I say, I don't know if that's just due to the volume being louder. Apart from that, I couldn't really split anything. I know a lot of people have also said about the original, because it's over 60 minutes long, would you lose some of the qualities of the sound pressing it onto vinyl, because you're using up just about every inch of vinyl, and they thought putting it onto two records, you know, you'll be able to get more detail in the sound coming through. But I didn't really notice too much of a difference in that. I've always thought this is a great sounding record, and it still is. So I wouldn't split either of these, to be honest. I think it's just a case of turning the volume up or down, depending on what pressing you put on, because they're both very similar. So that was my little experiment there, versus, you know, with originals versus reissues. And as I say, I was surprised at how kind of subtle, really, I found the differences to be over them. It may be the case that there's records out there that some people notice a completely huge difference. But as I say, Melinda's video was really interesting with her results, so I'll put a link below to her video, and if you want to just watch it to see, you know, what her results and her findings were, then you just click on the link and subscribe to her anyway if you're not subscribed, because she's into quite a varied taste. She's a big Beatles fan, but she's also a fan of Van Halen. She loves Van Halen, Quiet Riot, just loads of stuff, you know, quite a varied collection of rock, pop, a bit of melodic metal in there. Kiss, that's another one. So now that we've reached half an hour, I'm going to shut up now, and if anybody's got any thoughts or wants to do a response kind of thing with 5 of their own, that would be cool as well, just to see if anybody comes up with anything interesting. But in the meantime, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.